I have been employed at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office for 25 years now. I've had the opportunity to work in different divisions, from narcotics to being a field training officer, and supervised many divisions as well. One of my most enjoyable roles was being part of our crisis negotiations team, which I currently am the commander over now. That led to my desire and interest in mental health and why and how we do things as humans. So I went back to school. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and then went back and got my master's in clinical mental health counseling and became a licensed mental health counselor. That kind of was my passion for what we're doing now with the mental health wellness unit and the co-responder unit.
So how did we get here in terms of having, the internal and external? Was that something that you approached the sheriff with, or how did that all come to be?
No, so my degree in becoming a licensed mental health counselor was for after I left the sheriff's office and retired, but Sheriff Simmons was elected and came in. He learned of the benefit that was here, and he wanted to be progressive in how he approached the community's mental health concerns and the agencies. And so he said he wanted to develop a mental health wellness unit that focused on the community and internally as well. And that's how we got launched.
So, and we started with the internal unit. That was the part that was launched first, right?
Correct.
And so tell me, what does that do? What does that offer to the folks here within the department?
So I provide counseling to all of our deputies and our employees and their family members. And we also have another clinician that is here as well, so that we're available at any time that they need it.
Why is that so important? I don't think folks recognize that, first responders probably aren't the first to go seek mental health care for the most part.
No, first responders are not. And historically, it's very difficult for anybody, especially in law enforcement, to say, hey, this bothered me or this scene upset me. But we know that as humans, we're not designed to be witness to the things that we are and it not affect us in any way. And so luckily, the science and the research has shown that therapy and different types of treatment and upfront engagement helps reduce PTSD symptoms, depression, and anxiety, which has been a very known problem in law enforcement, but also not an addressed problem either.
And how has that been? What does the success look like so far?
I feel like the program has been very much accepted. I believe, of course, I'm biased, but we have had extreme success in what our purpose was. And even just being here as a resource and an outlet for our officers to know that they can come here and there are different processes they can go through is the winning part of the unit.
And so when did the idea to bring an external component come into play?
The sheriff approached me in 2022 and said he wanted to stand up a mental health co-responder unit for the community. Asked if I had any knowledge of it. I told him I was very familiar with the unit and the process. And so he told me to do what I needed to and get it going, because he felt it was a necessary need for the community and that it would have great benefits. And it would prevent a lot of repeat calls. It would really give the community the resources that it needed.
And before we kind of dive into the specifics, tell me a little bit about what the co-responder program is.
The co-responder program is where you take deputies that have more training and education in mental health and trauma and crisis responses, and you pair them with a licensed mental health clinician that go out and respond to the calls that the deputies would normally go to anyways. The advantage of it is you have officers and a clinician responding to them and are able to manage whatever the circumstance is right there in the moment, instead of a regular deputy responding and approaching it from a law enforcement perspective instead of a mental health perspective.
So like having Deputy Savage, who's got almost 20 years, she knows a thing or two.
Correct.
And In your time frame, and I asked her this too, have you seen the number of calls coming into you guys for mental health rise?
Oh, absolutely. They've continually risen over the years since I've started, and a lot of it is because funding is not as readily available to address the problem that we have, and it doesn't go away. And unfortunately, society and the way things are, it's just manifested to where it just grows and grows and grows, and it hasn't been properly focused on in the past. It's always been that taboo, let's not talk about it, instead of realizing that mental health affects everybody. It affects people that are normal, it affects loved ones, it affects professionals, it affects those that don't have the same status or opportunities that maybe somebody next door to them does.
Well, and just like you said earlier, a lot of times before we reach a tragedy, there are precursors. There are chances to have that interaction. And so maybe this is one of those things that could prevent something because of an interaction that the co-responder program is having.
That is the whole purpose of it, is to develop the bond with individuals that are suffering from chronic mental illness or who have just a single episode of a crisis that affects them in a way that they don't really know how to control either. Because when your brain becomes overloaded with stress, then you don't necessarily know how you're going to respond. And so when we as law enforcement officers would respond, we didn't necessarily know the proper way to handle it. And the only option would be to either put them in jail if there was a criminal violation or Baker Act them. But we weren't really focusing on where the gaps in care were at. And we all know law enforcement is the first one to respond, the first one to engage, and the first one to interact with the individuals. So our goal and purpose is to develop a relationship with everybody, to have that connection to where we are able to follow up and make sure that they're getting the resources, they're getting the care. Because a lot of times it's just individuals that don't have resources, care, or anybody that is willing to listen to what they have to say. And that little investment in somebody can be life-changing for them.
And then the follow-ups too, to make sure that they are, whether it was a one-time or a reoccurring, to make sure that they are set up for success. I think that's a great part of this program, that it's not just we're dealing with you in this moment and done. It's we're coming back to check up on you.
Correct, because that's where a lot of the fallout happens is, you know, we interact with somebody, we take them, we get the initial assistance that they need, but it's beyond that when the real work comes in and the real investment in people comes in. And so when they see us coming back, then they feel like, you know, we really do care and we are interested in their overall health and we want them to be successful. And oftentimes there are people that may even say, I don't want your help, I want you to go away. But it is a defensive mechanism. It's the barrier that they put up because people have failed them in the past. And so our goal is to be persistent and to prove to them that we are here and we are interested, and we may go away, but we're going to come back and make sure that you're okay and offer you help.
And I think that the benefits are clear to the folks who you guys are interacting with, at least just from our conversation. What are the benefits to the folks who may never interact with this team? I mean, this goes beyond just the individual being focused on at the time.
So I think in a large overview, the team is going to have an effect and interact on a large scale, even if it's not someone that is, you know, suffering from mental illness, but from our community partners, from our hospitals, from our jail systems. Our outreach is going to ultimately affect them because they're not going to be, you know, deterred in what their primary focus is based on us bringing individuals in that are having a mental health issue. And so I think it is going to be able to touch many people in different ways. And then there's just the component of, you know, businesses, employers, family members, loved ones, students, school systems. Everybody is touched and affected by mental health and mental wellness on some level. And so it may not directly affect somebody in the community, but overall, this program is going to affect everybody.
Have you noticed, or I don't know if you've really looked into it, but have you noticed, has there been a decrease in folks with mental illness in the jail because of this program now being on the streets for several months?
Well, I don't know that I can accurately respond to that because I don't have those numbers. I believe that the jail has services inside where they're tracking that data and they have that information. But I will tell you that the focus of everybody in the mental health world is to redirect those that have mental health issues from the jail and actually into care that is going to be long-term and yield greater results. Because we know what we've been doing in the past, that the jails have been the catch-all. The jail is where, that is where we take everybody, but we also know that that doesn't help resolve or reduce any of the issues. And then once the individuals are released from jail because it's not the proper environment for them, then we end up with the same situation again.
And you guys just launched the 2 new teams a couple weeks ago. I know Deputy Savage was very excited to have more hands on the roads. What has it been like? Has it been helpful? Are you guys seeing more interaction with the teams, with more folks out there?
Yes, we're so excited. Our mental health coordinator, Allie Mindy, she's the one that does all the data and the tracking and keeping up with everything. So it's been a lot more on her because Deputy Jeff Gaden and Deputy Ken Holyfield have been on the ground running since we launched, and they have been really making strong movement towards follow-ups and doing that part that takes a little bit more time and a little bit more work than just responding to an initial call. And so they have been working nonstop since they hit the road 2 weeks ago.
Well, and based on your experience, I think over time, seeing those rise in mental health calls, do you think eventually you'll be adding more units to this team down the road as its success shows?
I can definitely say I feel confident that the unit is capable of growing because the needs are going to grow. Unfortunately, with just the way the world is, I don't foresee it just dissipating and going away. But I also think the beauty of that is people are embracing mental health, embracing mental wellness. They're willing to talk about it. It's not taboo. And so the need for having it spotlighted and having resources and really going after it has gotten greater than what it's been. So it's a good thing that we've kind of come to that point and where we are today in society.
Last thing I can think of is, have you guys had any interest from other agencies in learning about your program to follow suit and have something like that in their own community?
Yes, we have had multiple agencies reach out and request for our information, our policies, how we developed it. We actually wrote a grant that we got 2 years ago to fund this program, and we are one of 32 agencies in the entire United States that received the grant. So it's been a learning process. Even the federal grants were trying to figure out what the process was going to be. And I think we finally got everything ironed out, which has been how we are able to launch the units now. So it was definitely a work in progress. We've even had Florida Department of Law Enforcement reach out to inquire about our internal and external components of the unit that we have.
Is there anything else that I didn't ask you about? Anything else you want to touch on or that you think people would be interested in knowing?
I appreciate the media highlighting what we are doing because law enforcement has always done so many things behind the scenes other than just responding to calls, but oftentimes the public doesn't see the other side. So I'm very grateful that you guys are really focusing on coming behind the scenes and highlighting all those other things that happen that we do. And then I also have to thank, Sheriff Simmons for really wanting to approach mental health and bring awareness and highlight it from within his agency to the community, because I think it's going to benefit everybody in the long run.